Welcome to the MBD Podcast, a show where we dig into what's actually working or not when it comes to scaling businesses with the people who've been there, and today's guest has definitely been there. So why don't you go ahead, take it away, tell them a little bit about what you've done and what you're doing.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jason. Thanks for having me on. Very excited here. So my name is Ben Bowman. I am the CTO of Inviso AI. And Inviso AI it's a couple things, as a lot of things are with AI, but a SaaS company. We have a platform, but also a consulting company for businesses wanting to implement secure and safe AI into their environment. Been in business about 2 years. I will say that I did have a change in my, a branding pivot about 7 months ago, where I started as StrataShield because I was thinking along the lines of cybersecurity and AI. But as the market evolved and I started seeing different openings and things that were going on within the market, I decided to pivot into a more SaaS type of name, which is Inviso AI. So everything I think is going great. I will say that I'm a lot more excited about where the market is now than where it was like a year ago. It is starting to pick up a little bit, and there is a lot more, I won't say too much knowledge with AI, but there's more acceptance with AI, and companies are knowing it's a directional thing that they're going to have to do.
Now, in taking that into account, so when you go into a company, what are the things that you're seeing them struggle with in trying to scale when it comes to being able to adopt AI and understand its or what it can do?
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of things, right? When you think about where companies are at, because there's so much misinformation out there on what AI is and what it can do. And I think Gartner, and this is still fairly true, I think it was a year ago where they came out with the statistic that 73 or 75% of AI implementations fail. So obviously there's a huge issue within AI, and I think there's a huge issue on knowledge, what can happen in your environment. But the number one starting point for me, and where I think the biggest struggle is where to start. Mm-hmm. And then, interesting enough, I still have a lot of businesses who are talking about AI, and I'm asking, well, do you have any acceptable use policies for internal AI use? Do you have any external facing policies on how you're using AI? I think a lot of customers and smart customers are starting to wonder, what are your ethical practices around AI? And I think it's that AI readiness conversation where they want to jump in, they know they need to, and two things: one, they're not ready, and they're not asking the right questions to get ready.
Mm-hmm. So, what would be good questions to ask to get ready?
Well, I think I always start with what their understanding is with AI, right? Like, what is your understanding? What are things you think you could do in the company? But again, I start with the governance piece to get ready. I think that's key. Is do you have an AUP, an acceptable use policy? Do you have any external policies? How are you using AI currently in your business? Do you know how your employees are using AI in the business? In cybersecurity, there's this thing called shadow IT, right? Which is people using applications that they shouldn't be using in the environment, and it's opening up security holes. With AI, we have this thing which is similar, shadow AI, where people are using AI applications that are maybe enhancing their work and their productivity, but we have to be cautious again when you're using an AI, let's say an LLM or a large language model. You have to be cautious of the information you're sending over that, because it is being used to train and the model. So you could potentially send PHI or proprietary information over to a model if it's not being used and monitored correctly. These are all really easy things to overcome within a business, to be able to use AI, but in a safe and ethical way. But that's really that to me, that's the best starting point. And then another thing that I've found is helpful defining a starting point is I developed what's called an AI roadmap for a customer. It's about a 2-hour meeting. And it's not about the technology of AI. I don't care. I've always been people, processes, technology last, right? It's the technology is the last thing we get to. But I really dive into the business, the departments, the people, the processes. What are their KPIs? How are they tracking success? All these different areas of ways they do business. And then I'm able to present about a 12 to 15 page report on every area that they could successfully implement AI, not technology that they could use, because we're not at that point yet. It's just like, look, out of everything you discussed, these are ways that are successfully being implemented in the market today. So let's start at success, right? And then we go through it and we say, okay, Where do you want to start at? That way, and this is usually actually a CEO conversation. This way, the CEO is able to sit there and define and say, "Oh, well, this is going to have an immediate impact on KPIs," or the board is really looking at this. So let's start with this, get a quick win, and then we start building that AI ecosystem, which is going to take, I mean, years, if not a decade, for companies to fully build an AI ecosystem. Partly because of maybe cash flow, a lot because of technology and waiting for AI to catch up. Right? We're still in I would still consider us in an infancy phase of AI. So
a couple of things. One, do you have templates in what you're talking about to put on the site that let people know that, hey, we're leveraging AI within the privacy policy and that it may be, input into an LLM that might have, external exposure?
Sure. So yes and no. So there's a template process that I go through, but every company is unique.
Yeah.
I mean, every vertical is unique. Every company is unique. So an external facing policy or even an acceptable use policy internally is going to be different for every company. For example, Colorado has passed some laws that require certain type of notifications and things to happen while you're using AI. Well, if you're a business in Colorado, you probably need to at least acknowledge that you're aware of this law that's been passed regarding AI usage and deployment in a business. And it does talk a lot around like restricting from using AI where it can use bias from decision making, things like that. But another example of that is a lot of companies are different in how, and this is true with technology, not just AI, on how they want to approach. Do they want to be cutting edge, bleeding edge, early adopters, like all these different things that you have with tech? And it's the same with AI. Like some companies might be like, look, there's really not a lot of proprietary information, and I want my people to just be using every AI tool that they can use. So it might not be as restricted. But then you get into healthcare, you get into finance, you get some more highly regulated industries. Well, now we've got to really have a discussion on how we use it, how internally they use it, and then also being open. If you are using AI, making sure that, let's say for applications in finance, that you're accounting for or acknowledging the potential of bias and decision making for approvals. And that could be whatever scenario you're using AI for. But I think there has to be an acknowledgement for, again, safe and ethical practices, both internal use and to the external people that rely on your business.
Yeah, because I think about it, it's like, well, I have the privacy policy, and then everything that we consume online is internal. But then when you add in these models, like say you have a chat bot or using a voice agent that's collecting information, that's leveraging an AI agent to then provide output, it's like within there is where people don't necessarily understand. It's like, what's going on with that agent? How is it getting the information, right? Well, it's leveraging a bunch of information out there. So in a business that does need to be protected, how would you make sure that information that goes into these AI agents isn't provided externally, whether it be in mass, where maybe not the individual they're looking for, to eliminating exposure?
Yeah, I think so. Right now, again, being in infancy, I don't think there's a perfect way. I think the first step is, hey, let's acknowledge that there is a potential for bias and keep a human in the loop, meaning that we're using AI as a thought partner, not a decision maker. Right? And I think that's the most important thing. Now, there are things that you can do, like have your own proprietary model.
Yeah.
Train that proprietary model, use something like a GPT or an OpenAI enterprise model, which again is proprietary to your business.
Yeah.
And then a lot of it is prompting on how the AI is used and how that flow happens. But those are varying costs, right? To have your own AI model, especially if you downloaded let's say a Llama model and you wanted to deploy it and you wanted to train it, that's not easy to do. That's fairly costly. And then you also have to have the processing power, GPUs, whatnot, to be able to even run your private model. I have some downloaded on my local Mac here we're talking to. They run like a snail, right? But if I were to put them on a GPU, they'd run good. So, and these GPU type of systems can cost upwards of, $1 million, $100,000 just to deploy, which is why the LLMs are so popular, because we're using these mass data center infrastructures to be able to process our queries so quickly. And I would say cheaply, right? When you consider the cost of it. So there's several things you can do, but I think awareness is the first. And then just making sure as you're adopting it that you're using that human in the loop to check for any kind of discrepancies, errors, security holes that can be opened. And again, very typical to technology. I don't think if you really break it down, there's some things that AI does differently, but it's still the same old song that we've dealt with every time. We get email. Great. Well, now we got to protect ourselves from viruses coming in. We got to protect from phishing. We got to protect from all this. And AI is the same thing. It's like, okay, we got this great tool, but now we got to protect from injections and viruses and all the other stuff that's going to eventually come into AI.
All right. So so now we've got to the point where you've got the meeting, you've spoken to a decision maker, you've laid out the process for, not implementation, but essentially, hey, here's your solutions. Do you find any similar solutions across certain businesses or industries that you find work well? Like if you were to look at someone, and I'm thinking of it just as like we started the website, usually that's the contact point. Like you look at a website, is there places where you start with like a chat bot, or if they call in, they get a voice agent for reception, so that way they get transferred to a human? What do you see more of a standard general approach? And I know it's always depends, but like, do you see anything that's more common than other?
Well, I think you hit a couple there, and I'll go back to chatbots maybe, but let me circle first with voice agents. I think voice agents are getting extremely accurate right now. I've seen and heard conversations with voice agents that you can't tell they're not human.
Yeah.
And I know that's weird to say, but like for real, their responses, their logic, everything they're using is very, very human-like. I think that's a low-hanging fruit for a lot of businesses, especially if you're in a call center environment.
Yeah.
It's not to replace. Here's the big misconception with AI right now. It's not to replace your workers. It's to replace the mundane tasks that your workers are having to do. And when you think about a call center environment, if you could answer all those calls that are coming in and just tying up a really good worker and just wearing them down, and you could reposition that worker to be more focused on the more difficult tasks, maybe more customer focused tasks, maybe tasks that bring in revenue instead of just answering calls. It's a huge miss right now. And I understand there's going to be hesitancy with it, but I think that's one of the first things I would explore is, across from marketing, AI agents, whatever, I would explore that immediately.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the things that we do for a lot of our clients is like they get stuck on intake. So let's go to a small client. They have a service-based business where they have a single receptionist who goes to lunch, who works particular hours, who gets to the office not always at 8 a.m. when it says it's open. And then you have you have her assisted by a voice agent. Now she doesn't even need to take calls, but that voice agent can take intake and then transfer when needed. And that frees her up to work on, hey, I need to do this customer service. I need to do invoicing. I need to do this. I need to send an email for the owner. It's a huge benefit. And I see more people starting to adopt it, but it goes back to, I think about what you were saying with the more of the privacy policy, that people need to have that buffer of understanding that it's on the site to help protect them. Then they implement this tool, right? Then you got to train the tool to do what you need. They need to make sure the human element's there, so that way it can, they can help, because people still want to deal with people. Like it's nice when you call up, and if you really didn't know, so it. And that's just the first step. Like that's the initial contact that someone has to build a relationship. And if you look at it from a marketing standpoint, if they think they're getting interaction immediately, that means they're not going to call someone else. You're going to capture them. You're going to start the relationship, and you're going to capture the information that you need, so that way you can continue to follow up. So I'm all on board with the voice agent. So what other things are you seeing as well?
So the next part, aside from voice agents, I still think is agentic flow, because now you have your voice agent, which is handling, again, voice calls, very specific. And when you think of agents, agentic, I think it's another buzzword in AI that doesn't always mean the same thing, and people throw it out. But if you think about agentic flow as an agent performing a human task, but a very specific human task. You mentioned a receptionist taking a call. That's a very specific human task. That's what an agent would do. You could have several different voice agent tasks. You're not going to have one voice agent that's going to answer and know everything about the business. AI is just not there. But you're going to have an agent that's going to know, like, hey, I transfer calls for accounting and I know how to answer questions about accounting. or we might have a major dispute going on with customers. They're calling in about the same thing, and they're going to know how to answer that question about dispute. Or parking. That's another popular one for an agent, is parking at a hotel.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's say that next step is it's collected information, it's put in the system. Well, now we can create your next agent flow within the company to, again, take out the mundane and move that along. So I'm trying to think of a good example from a receptionist who might take a call for an appointment, right? And they might schedule that appointment. Once it's scheduled, well, you might have an agent that's a specialist in scheduling, and it's going to be able to identify capacity. It's going to be able to identify where and move the schedule around, like future schedules or other things
Mm-hmm.
that may have impacted, and do more, again, custom, on the fly type of human like things. I think we're trying to get to the point of eliminating as much of that little mundane things, that where you have to click through multiple
Mm-hmm.
screens to get through for a human, get that all done by the AI, and then have the human actually take on the human like activities that AI still can't do.
Well, I find there's busy work and then there's productive work.
Yeah.
And eliminating the busy work, because something I've been able to do is using a tools, I can have it schedule meetings and do everything I need to and move it around and look at my calendar. And
Mm-hmm.
it's so much easier than, oh, hold on, let me email back and forth, where now I have like this, almost like a chat bot going, oh,
Yeah.
what's your availability? Okay, we're not available then. How's this? Okay. And it's back and forth. And I don't need to be a part of it because like it can see my calendar and do all the work that I used to have to do to free me up on doing other things.
Absolutely, the mundane. And then the third way, and this is something that has been a
Mm-hmm.
focus on, that I've focused on for, I mean, almost like constantly 7 months now, is getting information. So using your data. We all have mass amounts of data. Every company has mass
Yeah.
amounts of data. A lot of it's unused, a lot of it's dark, a lot of it's just sitting around, a lot of it's really messy. But the way for AI right now to use data is very cumbersome. You have to vectorize it. Typically, you have to use a separate data system. So it's causing more resource power. There's a lot of hallucinations with it, but people want to be able to access and ask questions to their data. So I've been working on this concept, and I'm through my first POC with it. We'll launch it by January. And this concept is it's simple. It's talk to your data.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a portal that can connect into any API, whether it's NetSuite, Asana, ServiceNow, Salesforce, whatever it is. You don't need RAG, you don't need Raft, you don't need all these extra vectorizations. I use basically a strategy of converting human language to query language.
Mm-hmm.
And you can ask it any question you want about your data. Like, what are my top 10 customers the past year?
Oh,
What,
wow.
what is this sales rep, up to, or compare this sales rep to this sales rep? Just human like questions that an executive would ask, and it will go through, convert that into a query, send it to the AI, and then evaluate it. And then again, working as a thought partner, it presents graphs and other information on it. And I'm really excited about this because I think this is going to change how we access data right now and how we access information. And right now it's reports, right? I have to dig 5 layers into a report and dig out 5 layers out of a report. I have to have someone build a special report for me every time I need a question answered,
Mm-hmm.
all the time. If we can just make it so you can just simply ask a question about your business environment, and then eventually tie in your KPIs, so the answers are aligned to your persona of who you are, your KPIs, and all that other stuff. It's going to be very disruptive. And then eliminating RAG and all the vectorization and all those other resources right now that are so costly, why enterprise companies are the only ones doing stuff like this. I think it can be very disruptive. So information to me is the third way, is access to information.
Well, I can't say how huge that is. I come from a business intelligence background
Okay.
where I would have to talk to teams and be like, hey, I need, like for at Disney, be like, hey, we want to know, what's the average time a user spends in a game?
Yeah.
Okay, let us get back to you. It's going to take us like a week. We got to write the query. We got to then go through it, make sure there's no errors. And then it would come back. You might be like, something seems off like this because the last report was that, and then they go back, so it might be weeks before you get it a basic answer. Now it's like at your fingertips, because then it was just like, let's get all the data together so that way we can use something like business objects,
Yeah. It's
right?
exciting.
So we can query it. And now it's like, I'm just going to ask a question, no matter who I am within the company, and I'm going to get the information back so I can start making decisions. I can be on the accounting team, to the marketing team, to the sales team, and it's like I can get ideas of what's going on throughout the organization, so I'm better aligned. Like, and ask
Yeah.
questions about my company, so I better understand the company, because everything sometimes gets siloed, and you're like, well, what's sales doing when you're over here, building the landing page? Like, it's pretty. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's exciting. The CEO, and again, this is my main entry layer in conversation I'm
Mm-hmm.
having with CEOs, sometimes CIOs, but we're wrapping up. So we'll have their POC, which is in a NetSuite environment,
Mm-hmm.
done. So it's
Mm.
combining CRM, ERP, all these
Yeah.
different things, and we're showing it to him. He's like, so I can be out of town, sitting at an airport somewhere like that, pull up my phone and just ask it a question that's on my mind, not have to go to my VP of sales, go to my VP of
Oh my God! Wow.
operations. And I was like, yeah, that's the whole point.
Sold.
And when he's looking at it, there's still some tweaks with, let's say, words like units and doors, right? For example, I think
Right.
that's a good example. Like, hey, show me how many doors there are. Well, AI might not convert units to doors, but so there is a couple hard coded things we have to put in there to train it on the exact data set.
Ah.
But it's not like a massive amount. And the results that we're seeing right now in the queries is, I'm just like excited to
Wow.
see this starting to come to fruition.
So it sounds like a real estate thing.
On that company, yeah,
Said
they're a
units to
little bit
doors.
more real
So I,
estate
yeah,
esque, but
yeah.
I can say they deliver fiber and internet into multi-dwelling apartment units,
Okay.
right? So there's a real estate aspect
Yeah.
to it, but there's also a technology aspect
Yeah.
to what they do. There's a service and delivery aspect to what they do. So there's all these moving parts to this. And NetSuite's an inherently robust Oracle
Mm-hmm.
data system that, again, usually you'd have to have Tableau and then
Right.
hire your Tableau report writer and then have all these
Wow.
specific things to get to it. And we're already, I mean, I'd say outperforming. We'll see how where I think we're wrapping it up next week, how that final delivery is, but I think we're going to hit it.
Awesome. Well, congrats on that.
Thanks, man.
Um, cool. So we've got our 3 stages now. When it comes to your business and building it, what are ways that you're building your pipeline?
Yeah, I think a lot is word of mouth. I think that's one way, and always the best way, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
the easiest trust entry layer to building a pipeline. I know that I've used LinkedIn in the past with various success. I've done email, used Apollo, right? Like programs
Yep.
like that for mass emails. And then I got so tied into the development and then had enough work on the POC side of businesses that were like, hey, let's do this, that it turned quickly into word of mouth. Right.
Good.
I think one of the hard things is, and I still haven't put out marketing for the platform I'm calling is Focal, right? That I'm talking
Mm-hmm.
about, is that number always haunts me. That 73% of failed AI implementations haunts me. And when I think about my experience with AI right now, and I think about how many companies I've explored and seen demos with and jumped into, and I call AI the 80% technology. It works 80% of the time, but the other
Mm-hmm.
20% it's horrible. And I just think there's this, especially when you're marketing, you're doing outreach for what I do, there's an ethical responsibility, again, to represent yourself correctly. So until I have a completely proven POC, which again, this is going to be wrapped up next week, I'm hoping, I'm not going to start marketing it. Now, I do a little bit more marketing on the AI roadmap. I do a little bit more marketing on the AI compliance and those type of things, because those are deliverable. I'm delivering them. That's not an issue.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think the marketing and outreach portion for so many AI companies is way too far ahead. I understand why they're wanting to generate interest,
Yeah.
but there just has to be, I think, a step back. I don't know if it's a slap in the face to the industry or a step back and have people be like, hey, let's start marketing the reality of what's not happening, not the wish of where we want to be.
Yeah, and because like I saw that a lot in video. Like, oh, you can create a video, create it of yourself, and then you start watching like, oh, that's not a real person. Oh,
Yeah.
that's AI. And you're like, you're almost there, But then the other side, it's like, well, in 6 months it might be there. So it's almost like, do we get the early adopters now? That way they can see the improvements. Um, as a company decision, right? But like, so like what we're doing is like we implement a lot of voice agents for these professional services, and I'd
Right.
say I'd say the success rate's a lot higher, but it's very simple, right? Like it's not a complex query that's going on for
Mm-hmm.
most of the things I'm seeing. Like, we're not pulling multiple files and going into the customer history necessarily. Although we're trying it, right? And
Right.
sometimes it works well, depending, right? And then you're finding that, oh, well, we need to break all the agents up. You can't have one particular agent doing everything because it's going to get all
Yep.
messed up. So it's like now you've got this big long flow that you
Right.
thought you could put, so no, yeah, it's interesting.
And what you're talking about is an ethical approach, right?
Yeah.
That's an ethical approach to you guys are verifying and validating what you're doing, and then you're releasing it. And that's why you're having the success you are with it.
Yeah, but I think
It's
what you're
great.
doing is super cool because you're doing like super complex stuff. Like it's
It's
going to be
complex,
real
but
solution provider, like a big help to companies that are able to get on this and have success are going to see it real quick.
yeah, I would say it's I mean, with what you're explaining with voice agents and doing voice, there's still quite a bit of complexity, especially for dialing in flows and
And
and all that. But yeah, I mean, but I think what you're talking about will eventually bleed into, and you kind of mentioned it there. It's going to bleed into what I'm talking about, and that's getting into the data of the company and have the voice be able to make a comment based on what data is in there. So
well,
I
they're
think that
yeah,
there is relevancy between both.
and it's starting to have like you have the ability to where you could have a chat bot or a voice agent with a Shopify tie-in to where it can look at a lot of this stuff. So it's
Mm-hmm.
starting. I don't know what the success rate of that is yet. We haven't really got into it, but it's like I see it. I see it coming.
Yep.
And it's pretty cool because it's just like, wow, it's going to allow for so much more productivity.
I,
Um,
I heard a live call from a veterinarian clinic, and it actually told the person, "Hey, we require a $25 payment up front to hold the schedule." The person pushed back and goes, "Well, why do I have to pay $25?" And said, "Oh, this is just standard procedure." Just
mhm,
very calm. Just this is just standard procedure. This is what it is. It took the credit card, processed the credit card, and booked the appointment.
mhm.
Like, so it's able to look at the schedule and say we have availability at this time, this time, this time. So yeah, and this is within scheduling systems.
Yeah.
But overall, yeah, you'd love it to be able to address that customer when they can verify. Of course, you need a verification of who you are, so it's not giving data about other customers and things like that. But it'll be there. Yeah.
It's coming. Yeah, I know. It's pretty cool. And also, when you try and get it riled up, it doesn't get riled up.
Right. Right.
Wait,
Well,
listen, I've had buddies do it to mine, and they'll try and rile it up, and it's just like, oh, no, okay, that's not going to work. I'm sorry, I can't help you. I'm like,
such a such a good point. So I'm getting a degree, a master's degree in organizational psychology,
mhm,
and one of the big conversations in medical or psychology is bias, right? Well, look,
yeah,
it's going to use bias information or hallucinations. It's going to give wrong information. I agree, that's still a problem, but my conversation about bias is exactly what we're talking about there is when you have a doctor who goes in who has had a bad day, maybe got cut off in
mhm,
traffic, maybe having issues at home, they're going to go in and they're going to deliver, in a lot of cases, a different patient experience
yeah,
because they have this bias of how their day is or this impact that psychologically is affecting them, and they're going to go in and deliver a different patient experience because they're upset, frustrated, and maybe that patient isn't going to get the best care. Well, AI is not. It doesn't think like that, right? You're not going to get frustrated. It's always going to be complimentary. It's going to be apologetic, like, "Oh, sorry,
mhm.
I could have done this or I could have done that." But as long as you prompt and train it correctly, I agree. It's such an interesting point there.
It's good work. So, if someone's listening right now trying to scale, what's one piece of advice you wish you had earlier?
I guess it's slow down.
Slow down, yeah.
Yeah, slow down right now and take a step back, and again find a starting point. Really, it goes back to a lot of the stuff I was saying. I think the other thing I think of is just because it's advertised to work a certain way, it doesn't always work
Right.
that
I
way. Because
find
I've
that.
spent a lot of
Yeah.
money on different applications, of course, not
I've
like
done the
large
same.
amounts, but monthly subscriptions,
Yep.
trying different things. Yeah, it's test it, try it out, Another reason why I'm doing POCs with this is I wanted to see it in a real, I proved it in my own environment, but I
Yeah.
wanted to see this in a real production like environment at a business and ask people like, yeah, I mean, it's almost like show and tell right now. Like show me, don't get into any long-term contracts. That's another mistake I see businesses make is you're in a 3-year contract. Well, guess what? The AI technology in 1 year, it's going to blow our mind, right? It's going to be so
Yeah.
like think of the BlackBerry, right? And how
Right.
that was
Yeah.
the best thing ever, this phone, and now that's a piece of garbage,
Right.
like compared to the phones now. So yeah, the same thing's going to happen with AI.
Wow. 3-year AI contract. Oh, that's a long one. Um, awesome. So where can people connect with you or learn more about what you're doing?
Sure. So on LinkedIn is a great way to always connect. I think that's how we got connected
Yeah.
was on LinkedIn. And so Benjamin Bowman, I mean, that's simple for LinkedIn. You could reach out to my Inviso email, which is ben at Inviso, ENVIZO .ai. And yeah, I'm always open to talking, whether you're a business looking for AI or you're just even a consultant who's like, hey, like I'm interested in kind of what you're doing, want to learn
Yeah.
more, or just ask questions. I love the AI. And we were talking about this last week when you and I
Yeah.
jumped on together. I love the AI conversation because I could talk about technology. I can talk about business. I can talk about psychology. I can talk about philosophy. Like all these
Right.
different things come up whenever I'm having them. So just, yeah, I'm just excited to just keep having these conversations.
Awesome. Well, thank you for taking the time.
Yeah. Thanks, Jason. I appreciate it.